echo my support for Congressman Langworthy's remarks. Certainly associate myself with them. It is all political, and it's very unfortunate. I want to thank the witnesses for testifying today. I also like to thank our chairman for convening this hearing so expeditiously. Less than 2 weeks have passed since the nation was caught in this just horrible crisis, watching this unfold, and here we are with action today. We've talked a lot about the $9 billion in fraud. I like quantifying it because more often than not we throw around the biggest numbers here in Washington, and sometimes it's hard to quantify it. It takes about a second to count a dollar bill, and that's 9 billion seconds. Means that if we started counting in 1741, 285 years ago, we would just now be finishing $9 billion worth of accounts. So take that data point to heart. But I want to concentrate my line of questioning today on the whistleblowers. And I know a lot has been discussed, but as we near the end of this hearing, I want to start with Representative Rarick. And it's our understanding, as has been discussed today, the Department of Human Services whistleblowers claim that they have faced retaliation from senior Minnesota Department of Human Services officials, including appointees, on behalf of Governor Walz. And I just want you to explain to us again how these administrators have retaliated against whistleblowers.
Right. So the threats were pretty intense. And as I've said, their jobs were threatened. They had strange questions demanding answers about where their children went to school, where their bus stops were. They were told that if you don't do what we tell you to do or not do what we tell you to do, you'll lose your job. You'll lose that job with cause, which means in Minnesota that you don't get unemployment insurance. You also could lose your retirement plan. Also, you'd be blacklisted off of all state agencies, and I would note that that also includes Hennepin and Ramsey counties, our biggest counties, because they are Democrat-run, and maybe even the University of Minnesota. I'm going to throw that into probably some of our biggest cities, like Rochester, Duluth, that are very Democrat-leaning. So it's a very vast threat. They've also threatened them with sort of a vague military intelligence. So there was one, I have the email right here that was just submitted, I believe, by Congresswoman Fishbach, and it says things like, I would like to use my former colleagues in the Army to locate where you are using your IP address, and I don't have that. He says, I don't have that technology anymore, but I can get it in a heartbeat. So there were vague threats, and I believe there was more threats beyond that, but it was very expansive threats.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. I actually wanted to talk about that. As I understand it, it was and I think it's to your point, she entered it into the record, but the interim Deputy Assistant Commissioner of Operations, for the folks watching at home, the Department of Human Services Minnesota allegedly was trying to use a contact in the military during the Biden administration to track whistleblowers' whereabouts. I presume this is illegal under Minnesota law, but would love for you to indulge us as to whether or not it is.
I don't know for sure if it's illegal in Minnesota. If it's not, it certainly should be. I think most of what happened to the whistleblowers is illegal, but the control over the state, the control over the largest counties, the control over some of our largest cities is controlled by Democrats. And so this was allowed to continue.
And to the best of your knowledge, whether it be Governor Dayton or Governor Pawlenty before, were whistleblowers treated in such a manner under those administrations, or is this unique to the Walz administration?
I don't have any reports, particularly through the Pawlenty administration. I know that fraud was beginning to be uncovered at the very tail end of his administration, but mostly under Democrat rule. But I don't know of this kind of retaliation in any other administration besides the Walz administration.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And I just want to close out. Some Minnesota officials claim they had no knowledge of this fraud, just found out about it, which I think we all know is demonstrably false. But I'm just curious, could you elaborate for this committee on the many ways by which Governor Walz could have been made aware of this? I mean, he certainly was made aware of this, turned a blind eye. I just want to make sure that we understand as a committee the many methods by which he was informed.
So there were a multitude of legislative auditor reports, so much so that I had read into the record what Jim Nobles, the last legislative auditor before Judy Randall, he had been the legislative auditor for 38 years, and he was so disgusted by the actions of Governor Walz that he wrote a couple comments in the Star Tribune saying that they literally just needed to do basic financial controls, and it's behooving to him, or confounding to him, I should say, as to why they didn't. So He is a very much a nonpartisan, non-political person, and he was shocked at what he found.
Well, I want to thank all of our witnesses for testimony today. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.